Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
Ali Machate is in the house. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Oh, you're so close. It's Machate with a soft she.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Spanish is my second language, and that would be Machate. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it would be in Spanish, sure.
Okay. Well, you're here and you take ideas, concepts, and help people materialize it and then take them all the way through the conceptualizing, writing, publishing, and then the marketing of their books. Is that an accurate assessment of what your service provides?
Yeah, pretty much. Most of our clients come to us with at least a rough draft completed, but we really help them to shape it and refine it and make sure their message is clear before we move on to production.
Okay. And who's qualified to write a book?
Qualified is an interesting word to use.
Yes.
Anybody can write a book, certainly. And the technology available these days and with the internet, really the barriers are very, very low. So anybody could produce a book. I don't always recommend, though, that a book is the right tool for the job. And I don't think that everybody's necessarily in the right place to get the most benefit from a book.
I'm going to create a scenario, and you'll tell, and I'd love to invite your feedback whether or not he should write a book. Because I've heard the story. You might have heard the story. You probably have, given your industry. Oh, there's a book in every person. May or may not be true, but then the question is, who qualifies? So Joe owns a plumbing company, and he's got Bill, his assistant or his protege, who's there to help, and they unclog pipes, essentially. And then sometimes they get new plumbing to put in for new housing developments, but they're busy 5-6 days a week. Somebody gave him an idea at the chamber mixer. Joe, you should write a book to separate yourself from Bill, who's the plumber down the road. Is there any truth to that?
I'd say there is some truth to that. And it is a really common scenario, right? This idea that like, oh, you should write a book. That's a great idea. You should write a book. It's not always true. So plumbing, right? First question, are his clients reading books? Are his clients turning to books for solutions about their plumbing? That's the more important question. When you're a business owner, you're an expert of some kind, and you're writing a book specifically for business purposes, you want to think really strategically about it. A lot of people generate the idea of writing a book from either someone saying to them, oh, you should write a book about that, or they internally just feel like they have something they want to say. That's how a lot of projects start, and that's great. But the next step, if you actually want anyone to read that book and you want that book to get results for you, is you have to start thinking about who is going to read that book? Who do you want to read that book? And what do you want that book to do for you? If Joe wants a book to bring him clients, he has to ask those questions. Are my clients actually reading those books? What kinds of problems are they looking for? And are they going to turn to a book for a solution? In Joe's particular case, since he's a plumber, I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not. Most people, they got a problem with their toilet. They don't go for a book to fix the toilet. So he's probably not going to get a lot of benefit out of a book.
Yeah, all right. That's an honest assessment. Okay. Bill Jones, attorney at law, downtown Baltimore.
Sure.
Should he have a book?
If he is looking to grow his business and he's been in business long enough that he has something that he wants to say to his clients, something that really encapsulates his philosophy of law, how he works, or he wants to teach them something that's going to help them to be better clients for him in the long run, a book certainly might be a good idea. A lot of it has to do with timing. Sometimes it has to do with resources. Sometimes it has to do with the specific goal. We talked a little bit before we got on air about doing podcasts. You asked me if I had had my own podcast. A podcast is another really great way to share content, attract people, and build an audience. So it's not always a book that's the best answer. But for Bill, yeah, it might be. It certainly would be worth the conversation, and it definitely should be something that he thinks about.
I wrote books because my then mentor said it was necessary if I wanted people to take me seriously as a professional speaker. And my rates were able to go up. But here's the big thing that happened with me. My thinking about what I deserved in life and my income went up 16-fold when I became a published author with John Wiley and Sons.
Interesting.
Yes, because I broke through the income barrier ceiling, the proverbial glass ceiling, which is always self-imposed, because I think we make the amount of money, if we're in business for ourselves, that we believe we deserve. And I was able to break through that and make serious money. I allowed myself to make serious money because I believed I deserved it, because I became a published author. And I had already had an MBA, and I had gone to, I ticked the right boxes, went to a very good school from undergrad, went back and got an MBA, and I was making very good money, but not really good money. And once I cracked that belief, it's amazing. Like the sky opened up. Moses appeared, parted the sea for me. And I was able to march through and get to the other side and never look back. That's how much I believe in the power of being a published author, because what it did between my left ear and my right ear is all about what I believe. Because I believe you get in life what you feel you deserve.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible story, and you're absolutely right. And for people, for a lot of people in the right position, like you said, you'd already had experience, you had a degree, you'd been in the field, you had things to say. For somebody at that level, writing a book absolutely can be like a magic key that unlocks that next level, or to use that buzzword, right, that to up level your business or up level your life. A book absolutely can be the key that opens that door. It's just a matter of, for each individual person, is that where your business needs to go? And are you at that level? I think a lot of people, when they get told they should write a book, sometimes it's too early. They've just started their business. They've just launched whatever they're doing. And people tell them, oh, write a book and it'll bring you clients and it'll grow your business. But they don't ever actually have anything to put in the book yet that would be compelling enough to accomplish those goals. So there are some questions, but yeah, generally I do agree with you. A book is an absolutely powerful tool. It's amazing for most business owners, and it can really just be an incredible game changer.
And it did more than that. So I'm fueling, I'm adding fuel to the fire of your business and what you do, because I'm such a believer. And I was excited to have you on my show because I went through and looked at your website. I do look into the backgrounds of my guests to make sure that they're a good fit. You're a great fit. And I want to see you get clients as a result of being on my show, because someone will resonate with your message. And what it also did was it made me media worthy. And why did it make me media worthy? Because hosts of shows, it's very hard to get on TV on your own. You can go through a publicist and they charge a boatload of money, or you can take some other measures. And if you write a book, it's a unique thumbprint. And what have you seen work for people that have become published authors? What media is availed to them?
Well, I'll be honest, we don't have a lot of clients that go for mainstream TV anymore. Mainstream TV and radio, especially if you're self-publishing, has become really out of reach for a lot of people. But there is still lots of media available. We've seen people get on tons of podcasts. We've seen people use a book to launch a podcast. So they publish the book first to build the audience a little bit, and then they have the podcast to grow it further. But even just like you were talking about, the psychology of how writing a book changes you and changes how you show up with people, I think is really worth, spending a minute on, because I had a client not too long ago, her book published earlier in the summer. Really great lady, very smart, lots of experience in her business, but not incredibly visible. And then she wrote this book. She had an identity. She identified a real need in her niche. She was able to create a book that people desperately needed and wanted. She targeted it very well. We helped her all the way throughout the process. She was actually one of our coaching clients when we had a book coaching service a few years back. We really made sure that the book was dialed in very precisely to the people she wanted to help and the people she wanted to work for. And I talked to her not too long ago, and just a month or two after the book had released, she told me that she was closing business faster. She was closing higher ticket packages. And she said the most interesting thing was when she got into a room, whether it was virtual or literal, when she was talking to people about what she could do for their organization, and she would mention that she had just published this book, she said their whole face changed. They
Yes.
they leaned in, they got more interested. So, you mentioned like being taken more seriously as a speaker. If there are certain goals that if the book is right, being a speaker, attracting higher level clients, getting in front of new people, media opportunities, speaking engagements, keynote speaking, all of these things, it is true that having a book helps people to take you more seriously because they know that if you've put the time and energy into writing a book and the book is good and it's professional, that's a reflection of what you're going to bring to them in anything that you do.
You mentioned TV and radio is out of reach. What do you mean by that?
I wouldn't say it's entirely out of reach, but if you're an independent author, most television shows and radio shows, mainstream TV and radio, they're just not as amenable. They're not as friendly to people who are independently published as they are to traditional publishers, where they already have those established relationships. That doesn't
True.
mean that you can't get it, right? It certainly does happen. But you definitely have to make a much bigger impact as an independent author before those channels are going to really be interested in talking to you compared to podcasters and bloggers and influencers. There's just, I think the internet is a landscape that's just more friendly to independent producers of all kinds of content.
Well, and we talked a little bit about the game of becoming an Amazon bestseller, and it is a game about the right categories and keywords and getting a bunch of friends to maybe pre-order and play that game. It's partially there, but is there any merit to it? Talk about the different badges of an author and how important that is in elevating their credibility of their book. I mean, it's a huge feat to write a book. I acknowledge anybody that's gone through the process. It's hard, it's challenging, and I'm glad there are people like you that can navigate those tough waters for people, because most people start and stop, as well as they don't ever do a podcast. They start and stop because it is difficult and it does take perseverance. So what would you recommend, or what can you talk about? Is it more than sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people, I think some of it's pop culture, right? It's just what we see happening. People celebrate being, oh, they're a best-selling author. They're a New York Times best-selling author. This person's best-selling, best-selling, best-selling. And if you're a New York Times best-selling author, that
whole different level.
Whole different level.
Yeah.
Because it reflects a certain amount of sales, right? It's not just about the merit of the book. If you're a New York Times bestseller, it means your book is selling major numbers countrywide, right? So yeah, that's moving the needle in a very real way. But I think people don't understand that that word bestseller doesn't mean the same in every context. So here we have Amazon. People publish on Amazon. They think, okay, well, I want to be a bestseller. I'll be an Amazon bestseller. And Amazon has a number of different types of bestsellers. So if you were in the top 100 of books selling on Amazon, that really means something. Of all the millions of books that Amazon sells, if you rank in the top 100, it means you are selling a large enough number of copies, you're getting serious visibility. And then Amazon telling you that you're a bestseller means that Amazon itself starts to get engaged in helping you to sell your book. So there's a real tangible benefit to that if you reach that level. But what most people are talking about when they say they're an Amazon bestseller is a category bestseller. I personally consider that to be a bit of a vanity metric because
oh yeah,
like, so to use the worst example, right? You could publish a book and you could say, well, this book is belongs in the category of basket weaving, right? And if there are 3 other books in the basket weaving category and they sell 2 copies a month and you sell 3, all of a sudden you are the #1 best-selling category in basket weaving. But you don't have to say that, right? You just tell people, well, I'm an Amazon bestseller, right?
And you
So
got the screenshot to prove it.
that's right. And you've got the screenshot to prove it. And this problem has become so widespread that Amazon itself has actually started cracking down on it. There was a notice just a couple of years ago that they were going to start scanning people's descriptions and covers. If you call yourself an Amazon bestseller, and in fact you are a category bestseller, not actually in the top 100 of Amazon's actual bestseller list, they will penalize you. They don't want people saying that because they realize that it's so misleading, that this category bestseller thing. It's also very fleeting. It gets refreshed, I think something like every hour, or maybe even more frequently than every hour. So if you have a big batch of sales come in, all of a sudden you hit that category bestseller list, it's gone very quickly.
Yes.
So,
Unless you do it every day.
right, exactly. So in some ways it's meaningful. In some ways it doesn't mean as much. As far as it being a goal, I don't think it's the right goal, especially when you're writing nonfiction and you have a business. I mean, personally, I'd rather sell a whole bunch of copies slowly over the course of a few years than sell a whole bunch in 1 week, hit a bestseller category, and never sell another copy again. And beyond that, think about how much money one client brings to you or what one speaking opportunity could be for you. Some people never sell books. They don't hit bestseller categories because that's not really their goal. They're leveraging that book as a tool to get other opportunities where they're going to make vastly more money than they ever would just trying to sell books 1 copy at a time.
From my personal experience, I retired briefly in 2012 and was living in Lima, Peru. I had written a book which was published by John Wiley and Sons, the traditional route, and I do want to talk about traditional versus self-publishing.
Totally.
And I was retired, I thought. And then all of a sudden, my PayPal dinged $1,000. And I didn't know where that came. I was like, who's paying me money? And it was for a 1-hour consult from when I was running an advertising agency in Los Angeles, which I had sold in 2008. And this money hit my account. Well, it was for a consult. And how did he find me? Through my book that I'd written, The Silent Salesman, which had published. I got about 27 reviews. Not a lot, but more than the average. I think the average person gets 2 or 3 or something. But these were organic reviews that had come in, and I was in a niche category, and I got this call that came in and requested an appointment. So I called the guy who was in L.A., coincidentally, where I had originally come from, and called him. And then it resulted in about $60,000+ in consulting that I got involved in related to my book. That book was paid for many times over right there. And guess what happened? It all snowballed. 4 clients came in because of that, all paying me a lot of money every month. And these were 6-month contracts. So I unretired very quickly.
Yeah.
All because of me being a published author.
Yep,
so there
exactly.
isn't anybody that can convince me to say, oh, a book is wasted. I've asked a lot of people over the years, if you could put your book back in your head and without all the expense, would you do it? Even the people that whine, I didn't make any money. None have ever said, oh, I would put it back in my head.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, even the process of writing a book, I think, can be so powerful because for some people, it can be the first time in their business that they've ever really sat down and spent significant amounts of time just thinking about their message, their clients, their ideal clients. What exactly are these people struggling with? How exactly do I want to speak to that? What do I want to teach them? What do I want to tell them? How do I want to inspire them? And it takes many hours to write a book. So spending that time in that deep thought place can really change how you run your business, how you teach, how you interact. I had a client once who came into me thinking that she was just writing a book about the workshop she'd already been teaching for years. The process of writing that book made her change the workshop entirely.
Well, talk to me about choosing a traditional publisher. When I had self-published, then I went traditional route with John Wiley, and that was back in started. I got paid $10,000 to write my book proposal, which I did. After my book proposal, I got $10,000 check sent to me. I never got any more royalties for domestic. And then I was written. Then I was paid another 2,500 through distribution through Ingram because the book was translated into German.
Mm-hmm.
And then I never received another penny. And I think I sold about 14,000 copies, including Germany, with that. And it was distributed in Barnes and Noble years ago. And I
Nice.
also had invested some money in the airport bookstores. So that was back then. What's your opinion on that today, Ali? And this was a long time ago, so you're more current.
Yeah, I mean, traditional publishing is still a really great option for some people. The problem, of course, is that it's very limited in terms of access. I like to say that book publishing, traditional publishers are like the Olympics, or the major leagues of book publishing, if you will. And only a tiny percentage of the large number of very talented people out there, right? Think about major leagues. You have people playing in farm leagues, you have people playing in the minor leagues, really talented people that never make it to the majors because only such a small percentage can. And traditional
Correct.
publishing is kind of the same thing. If you are someone who has a large enough platform, if you are someone who, is lucky and has some good contacts, if you are someone who has a wonderful network of connections that can help you boost the signal, you have an idea that's really timely and really sticky. Traditional publishing can be amazing because it can amplify you to the national stage and even beyond that, the international stage. Like you mentioned, books can be translated and sold in other countries. Um, it's just that many, many, many people are not at that level. And that's okay because now, unlike probably when you first published, the options for independent publishing are incredible. There's so much available, so many service
Today.
providers today, outlets, ways to get publicity, ways to get distribution, ways to get translation. You can do almost everything a traditional publisher would do for you yourself. It's a different level. Everything is to scale, of course. But you can have a very similar experience and you can have an incredibly fulfilling journey with your book. You can reach people, you can change people's lives, you can sell books. Like you just mentioned a few great examples, the book can do amazing things for you to get you opportunities to do more with your business and just with your life in general. And it doesn't have to be with a traditional publisher. So people have options. They shouldn't feel like traditional publishing is only real publishing. I hate when people say that. Like if you're not traditionally published, you're not a real author. It's ridiculous.
Well, I thought that way until I stopped thinking that way
Yeah,
because I was with a major publisher and I would
sure.
poo-poo anybody writing their own book. But it also back then, in order to get accepted into the airport bookstores,
Right.
Walden, I think, was the book outlet. It's owned by Walden Books. You had to go through a major publisher back then. This is 2008. I don't know what the story is today. Is that still the case?
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm talking about as far as scale. There are some opportunities that are really only available to traditionally published authors. Now, every once in a while, you'll hear a story of some indie author who broke through, right? Some indie author who made it onto the New York Times list, some indie author who made it into the airport bookstores. But that's pretty rare. Most of the time, channels like Barnes and Noble, right? The big block stores, Costco, those kinds of places, airport bookstores, mainstream TV, mainstream media, most of those places prefer to work with traditionally published authors, and those doors are generally closed to indie authors.
And I've heard of people marketing their books on TikTok. I thought it was for dancing girls, but yeah, tried to show their talents of their latest moves. But it's not. Is that the case? Do you get them on TikTok today?
So they actually call it book talk because there is such a huge community of authors and book fans and readers on TikTok that yeah, there are people now. Again, everything is dependent. Some types of books, very serious nonfiction, literary fiction, doesn't do as well in that format. But if
Oh,
you Yeah, but if you're writing fiction, if you're writing YA, if you're writing genre fiction, Colleen Hoover is a very popular, huge best-selling novelist right now. Her career was launched on TikTok. It was because of people virally finding her work and loving her work. I believe she was independently published at first, and it grew into such a huge fan base that now, I mean, they just made a movie out of one of her novels, right? It Ends with Us came out not too long ago.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
I'm not
so
familiar with that author, but I'll take your word for it.
yeah, oh yeah, huge, huge best-selling author.
So it's better. So TikTok is more in line with fiction writers.
Mostly, yes, mostly fiction. People tend to get really good results. And like I said, like more very targeted genre fiction. So knowing that who your readers are, romantasy, certain types of rom-com type stories, cozy mysteries. So there are certain types of books that are doing really well on
Okay.
BookTok.
I know nothing about those categories you mentioned. I don't read, I don't think I've read fiction in years. I used to read some Tom Clancy but that's more serious fiction based on
Yeah.
some, I mean, it was an education reading any of his books. I don't know if you've read his, but that genre doesn't do well on TikTok. Where does social media play into your marketing with your authors today?
I'll be really honest with you, Mitch. We don't do a lot of social media marketing. I
Oh,
know that,
okay.
yeah, I mean, people have very differing opinions on this. I feel like social media is kind of a hate love situation for most authors. And a lot of people that come to us, one of the first things they ask is, do I have to be on social media? Do I have to?
Yay. I would be annoyed to have to go on to TikTok
Yeah.
and
And that's what I tell them. I say, look, social media, if you're using social media, if you already are using it and you have connections and you have a platform, absolutely you can be strategic about social media, grow your reach. It can be a wonderful tool for selling books. It can. But if you don't like using it now and you're already not using it, you're either going to fall off the wagon real fast or you're going to hate it. And your stuff is never going to be that good because that energy is going to come across. You're being forced to do
okay.
something you don't
Okay.
like. And I just feel like there are so many other ways to market books these days that if you truly don't like social media, there's no reason to force yourself to do it.
Okay. Where do you take people? They've gone through the process, they're ready to launch. New York Times bestseller is a pipe dream for most, or a lot of money to spend. I know with the numbers I've heard, 8 to 10,000 books need to be sold through various channels within a week. The speculated algorithm, nobody
Right.
knows exactly, unless the people who work for New York Times. I'm sure they've got a very strong, ironclad NDA that will preclude them from sharing what that is. But people have tried to reverse engineer it. Absent that, I don't know if you offer New York Times best-selling services, but for the most of your clients that come through, fiction or nonfiction, what's the plan? What's the next step? How do they create some sales and traction?
Yeah. So depending on where the author is at, we have two sort of options. And then, of course, beyond what we offer directly, I have a network of folks because I really feel like it's important to help people find the best fit. And the honest truth is, we're not always the best fit. So I'm perfectly happy if we've been editing someone's book and we've helped them to publish the book. If I think there's someone else with a marketing tactic or a marketing technique that's going to be a better fit for their particular audience or their particular goals, I'm happy to make that introduction. But as far as what we do, if a client does not have an existing audience, if they don't have a mailing list, they don't have a large reach, they don't have a large network, what's most important to focus on when that book publishes is foundational stuff. So any of the higher level marketing they might do later on, what's going to happen is people are going to come to check out the book on Amazon, right? If they come to check out the book on Amazon and it has 2 reviews and one of them is from the author's mother, right? They're not going to be very impressed. So that's what our package focuses on. We focus on getting a large number of positive reviews as quickly as possible. We focus on introducing the author. We do some research to find other authors in their category who are speaking to the same audience so that we can make some introductions and hopefully get some endorsements from those authors, possibly some cross promotion opportunities.
That's
Uh,
a nice tip. Okay. Very good
yeah,
tip,
yeah.
Allie.
Um, If they, depending on the type of book, if it's a memoir or nonfiction, we might steer them towards doing some podcasts, certainly getting out there and talking about the book and sharing their story. We might focus on getting the book onto platforms like NetGalley, which is where a lot of people who do book reviews hang out, and use that to get the book into the hands of influencers or book bloggers, people who do reviews, professionally or even just as a hobby, but routinely and seriously. So we're just trying to get the book out there into the hands of the right people to try to get those reviews. And we're looking very specifically at the first 30 days of the book's life. Because as you mentioned, the New York Times algorithm, Amazon also has this sort of mysterious algorithm that we know some things about it, right? But we don't know exactly how it works. But one of the things that we do know is when a book publishes, those first 30 days are really crucial. And if you get a lot of the kind of activity on your book that Amazon wants to see, people landing on the page, people converting to buy or download the book, and people posting positive reviews. When that happens a lot in the first 30 days, Amazon itself pays attention. And then you start to get the organic boost of Amazon's marketing. Things you can't even buy, Amazon will start to do, like recommending your book to other people, like putting your book in emails that they send out to buyers. So if you can make that happen, you can start to get a little, momentum going for your book, even beyond what you're doing yourself. So that's really what we try to focus on. And then there are lots of other marketing tactics that people will do, like advertising. I get lots of questions.
I was going to ask you about that. That was my next question. Is that useful?
Yeah, ads are absolutely useful. But in my opinion, they're not a first tier approach. So it's more important to get those endorsements, to get those reviews, to get some good rankings, basically have something good going on the page so that when you run an ad and people click through to check out the book, they actually convert. You can spend a lot of money on ads and have a really great ad that drives traffic. But if what they see when they get to your page doesn't convert them, you've wasted that time and money. So you get that foundational piece in place first. And then absolutely ads can be a really important part of a long-term success.
What is the magic number of reviews needed for where people take you seriously? You said 2 reviews and you squished your face.
Yeah. So bare minimum, we say is 25. Ideally, it's 50. If you really get 50 reviews minimum in the first 30 days, that can start to make a lot of things happen.
50 reviews. Wow. That's quite a number. I mean, that shows that, okay, you're in the game seriously. A+ content important?
Are you talking about the advertising?
For Amazon. Yeah.
On Amazon. We haven't really experimented with that a whole lot. I've seen it done nicely for some books. I haven't seen any good data as far as, does it really earn the money back? Does it really make a difference? So I'm not 100% clear on that, but certainly if you've done all the other foundational things and you have a little extra money, it's not a bad thing to experiment with.
And what about, you mentioned NetGalley as a source, and there are some other outlets out there that people have mentioned. Audiobooks, do you recommend all formats? Do you also recommend that people do book tours?
So audiobooks, I think, can be wonderful. Audio is a growing market. It's a huge growing market. It's something like, I think last year it was something like 250% over the year before. The pandemic was a really interesting moment for audiobooks. Lots and lots of people turned to audio that really never had before, I think because we were all so exhausted at looking at screens all day. So people wanted to listen to something instead. And it really hasn't died off. So yeah, audio is a huge market for books. Most books, not all, but most books lend themselves really well to audio. Again, it's not something we typically recommend in the first tier, just from a budget perspective. To do a really good audiobook, it takes an investment. You don't want to just take your phone into your closet and read your book out loud. Like, that's not going to produce a great audiobook. So we will typically advise that clients do the print book and the ebook first, and then follow with the audiobook not too long after. It's not a killer if you don't do it, but it certainly can be a huge booster if you do.
All right. Well, that's yeah, because it is growing. I know podcasts are growing. It's an auditory learning platform. And
Yeah.
I looked at 2 major authors who are New York Times best-selling authors. I looked at Mel Robbins' books, her
Mhm.
books, and I looked at James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, and I
Yep.
examined what their pages look like just for strategic purposes. And I thought they've done a great job. They've sold millions of books, millions. What are they doing that's different than others? Because they were picked up by a major publisher, or do they have a whole marketing team? What do you think?
I mean, kind of yes to all of that, right? Like, so, I mean, you also have to think about, yes, because they had traditional publishers, so they had that national reach. They had those doors open to them that got them even more visibility and more visibility. But it's also important to remember what happened before they got that book deal. I think that's where like a lot of people get stuck because they see, okay, you get the book deal and all of these things follow, but they forget that you have to have a lot of success before you get the book deal. So I don't know a lot about James Clear and Mel Robbins, personally, but I'm willing to bet that before they got that book deal, they already had a following. They already had been out there speaking or teaching or consulting, whatever it was that they were doing. They were already getting visibility. They were already connecting with clients. They'd been doing the things that they were doing for a while and getting really good results and traction with those things. So before they even got the book deal, they already had a very successful business and a very successful platform to build on, or a really strong network that they could leverage, which the publisher probably tapped into to help sell books.
Well,
So
Mel
those
Robbins
things
is
are
one of the
important.
top 5 podcasters in the world. I'm not aware of James Clear having a podcast, but his book is excellent.
Yeah.
Number one, it's an excellent book. He really took time and he was blogging.
Yep.
He was
Yep.
blogging. So yes, he had a platform. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely correct. Your stuff. I'll say that. Yeah, and it
Platform is
ties.
always key.
Oh, it's key. And then Mel, I believe, she was a broadcaster. So she worked in TV.
Oh, even better. So she really has media connections.
Exactly. So she had
Yep.
all the boxes were checked. With
Yep.
James Clear, I'm not sure, but they're two of the biggest authors. They dominate Amazon. I just look at them as examples and think, okay,
Oh, yeah.
they have A+ content, thousands and thousands of reviews each. New York Times, they've got the real Amazon bestseller badge up there. That's
Yeah.
the real one,
Yep. The real
not
one.
like the
That's right.
gamed one that we talked about earlier. So
That's
they
right.
are, they're at the top of the food chain. In the
Yeah.
speaking world, Tony Robbins is top of the food chain. He's an
Yep.
example, so it's they're those people to look at. Okay, what are they doing right? But
Yep.
you take people through the basics, and then for most people in your, let's say, in your basket, you make it realistic. It sounds like you're a practical, realistic person.
I am. I'm extremely pragmatic. I mean, I believe in big dreams and I want to help people achieve big goals, but I think that the most likely route to success is pragmatism. You have to know what's actually realistic to achieve, and you have to know what it's actually going to take to get you there. That's the piece that a lot of folks don't, really understand because you don't know what you don't know, and we're always given these, crazy success stories. People love to share the success stories, but you very rarely hear all the things that happened behind the scenes to make those success stories. A friend of mine just launched his book very recently, and he made a great comment. He said, yes, it only took 10 years for my overnight success to happen.
Exactly. Very true. Very true. Well, Allie, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can visit me at thewritersally.com. We have a blog. We have some great free resources they can download. Of course, if they get on our mailing list, they'll get a ton more resources. And I've actually created a special resource just for your listeners.
Oh, wonderful. Please share.
Yes. So I have a pre-recorded webinar. It's called Don't Write the Wrong Book. And it is specifically targeted to people who want to write a book as part of their business, all these things that we're talking about. I want to make sure that we help them understand that not every book will elevate your visibility. It has to be the right book. And there's some strategy to making sure that that book is, in fact, the right book to help you achieve your specific goals, whatever it is you're trying to do. You can have a really good book, Mitch. You probably know this. You can write a book that is technically a good book that still may not actually achieve the goals you want because it's not marketable, because it's not
Yes.
really dialed in to your audience or what you want to do. So this webinar will help you avoid that trap. It's free, and it is at offers.thewritersally.com/amazing-authorities.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. You've been
My
a great
pleasure.
guest, and I will invite you back sometime later in the year so we can
I'd love that.
then have an update. It's been great having you, Allie. All the best to you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to mitchcarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.